Chris, how's Paddy Dangerfield looking for this week?
Yeah, he's looking really good. So today will tell us a little bit more, but to be frank, to my eye, he was looking good a week ago. So we've been clear that we would be conservative in his return. And we're still thinking that way, but we're starting to get to the point where we're struggling to come up with reasons for him not to play.
Is there any consideration to giving him another week, or is, you know, as you said, now the time to, if he's ready to go?
Yeah, you've got to make the call at some point. The only part that I'm crystal clear on is that if we're umming and ahhing, we will be conservative. And that's the same with Cam Guthrie as well, who's you'll see out there on the track today, he's looking really good, and his return's imminent, but it's likely that we'll just hold him back a little bit longer than he might have otherwise needed.
Yeah, right. So I thought he was still a couple of weeks away. So is that maybe a sort of recover quicker than you thought? Or?
No, look, he won't play. He won't play this week, you know, I probably shouldn't get too specific on injuries because whenever I try, I end up sounding vague. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that those guys are close, but we're more likely to hold them back a little bit more than we might have thought was appropriate in previous years.
Is that the same for College Asney and Zach Tui as well? Obviously picked up minor niggles in the win.
Oh, they're a little bit different in that they haven't had any layoff, and Zach Tui played out the game, and we'd expect that he would be available, and College Asney's just minor sort of tightness as well, and expect him to be available as well.
What do you do with your forward line with Gary Rowlands? He just walked past and said you don't keep a Ferrari in the garage for too long. So
did he?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, how's he going, and what does that do to your forward mix if he is available?
Well, he's going to play this weekend, which is really exciting for us. But we're not in a position to sort of forecast exactly how he's going to come back into the AFL team. I think my position, at least internally, is really clear on him. When he's up and going and really ready to play well, he'll be in our team somewhere. But our forward line's looking pretty stable at the moment, which is always a priority for us. So yeah, we just need to think about how he comes back through the VFL program, and he'll play some different positions as well, so that'll give us some options. We're not pigeonholing him as a forward necessarily.
A wing potentially, or
no, I'm not prepared to disclose exactly what we're thinking there, but yeah, maybe on the wing. It's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that one.
So will that be through the VFL this weekend?
Oh yeah. I mean, Gary hasn't played at all. He hasn't played any of the practice games, so yeah, he needs some match practice. Probably as much as anything, just to get the feel for the game that even the very best players in the competition need when they play their first practice game of the season. So that's sort of where he's at in his prep, but physically he's really ready to play. And again, that probably speaks to our policy a little bit. We rarely bring guys back into the VFL sort of thinking they're not quite ready to play AFL footy. He's ready to go physically, but it'll just take a bit of time for us to assess how he's sort of picking up the speed of the game, etc. But he's been training well. He's eye-catching on the track, that's for sure.
So with the changing role for him, I mean, like it's difficult for anyone, but obviously someone who's been established in his specific role for so long, especially this club. So how did that sort of come about? Is that something recently, or something you've been building towards over the pre-season, or has that been more sort of in the past couple of weeks with your forward line going well?
No, we've been thinking about it for a long time. And look, I'm not saying that he's got a different role. I'm just saying it's an option. Like we know. We're really confident that we could slot him into our forward structure without too much training. But if we were to play him somewhere else, we would have liked to have worked on it and trained it and even seen it a little bit at the lower level. And he's played other positions throughout his career, probably more so at Sydney. But yeah, when we brought him in, we didn't bring him in to play as a deep forward. We thought he was going to be a bit more up the ground. It's just sort of the way that it's evolved. So, if anything, we're kind of going back to a position that he's had a bit of experience with in the past.
With the position you're in now, obviously 4 straight wins to start the season, do you feel like you could confidently manage a couple more veterans as you have sort of the last few weeks?
No, it hasn't changed our policy. So I understand that you may not believe me that if we were 0-4, we'd be taking a very similar approach. But having said that, I think we have a reasonable track record of managing our list irrespective of opposition and venue, and it really comes down to the individual circumstances, you know, and the way the draw works with short breaks, etc. And so, I can. We don't have to worry about what we'd be doing if we were 0-4, but I'm pretty confident we wouldn't be playing guys that we thought would benefit from a longer recovery.
Chris, just on I mean, it is a footballing matter, but the Jeremy Finlayson 3-week ban, I mean, clearly there's a juxtaposition between 5 weeks ago in the pre-season when I was at Clarkson. Do you feel like coaches should be held to a higher account than players, and is there a contradiction there from an AFL House perspective?
I just don't feel well enough informed on these situations to comment intelligently. I think it's really dangerous to assume that you know the nuances of those situations and then make, a strong public comment. I suspect if I did know more, I would have a stronger opinion. Now, whether or not I'd air that is another point, but I just caution everyone from comparing two things that are different and conflating them. So look, I get that. Say, for example, the Players' Union has a responsibility to see things from a partisan view, which is clearly what they've done. The Coaches Association, for example, might take a similar view to protect their members, and I'm not sure that either of those views can be considered completely balanced.
Chris, Reece Stanley said he was blessed to land at Geelong. How do you sum up his, 141 games for Geelong that he's played to bring him to 200 for his career?
I'm really proud of Reece. We brought him in really with a specific role in mind that he hadn't played much at AFL level. So he was a forward at St Kilda and played a little bit back as well, but we brought him in specifically to be a ruckman, and he's just been terrific value for us. Been a really good person to have around the club and performed well for us on the big stage, but it hasn't been easy for him. He's had his ups and downs, and he's had to fight his way through, and my observation is that he's better for it. You don't wish it on players necessarily, but to become a really resilient player, you need to find your way through some difficult times. It's difficult to build resilience if everything's just smooth for you, and very few AFL players get that sort of road, but his has been a bit tougher than some. He's played a difficult position, and to get to 200 I think is a fantastic achievement. I'm really proud of him.
Clear chance to see Conway-Stanley combination this week, or will Toby have to go up to Cromer Street and play?
We're thinking about it. Is Cromer Street North Melbourne?
Lawrence.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, gotcha. We're thinking about it. Yeah, probably again not in the position in our preparation for this week to roll out our plans just yet, but it's a live option for us. Again, I'll repeat myself. You'd be sick of me saying it, but we consider those two to be a partnership. Those two in particular. We've got other options as well in the ruck, but we'll use them both throughout the year. And the priority for Toby is making sure that we don't cut any corners to make sure that he's a really consistent, decade-long player for us.
Just one player we've been tracking in the VFL is Mitch Hardy. He had a couple of cracking games pre. Unfortunately, the VFL might have come at the wrong time, might have come at the right time, I'm not sure. But where's he sitting in your thinking at the moment?
He's doing everything right, Mitch. So for those that don't know, we brought Mitch in through the mid-season draft last year, and he's just made every post a winner. So far, he works on his game really hard. He's improving all the time. I guess our assessment would be that if the opportunity arises for him to play AFL footy, he'll be ready.
Reece said a phone call with you was the main pitch to get him over. Can you remember that conversation and what you said?
Yeah, I think we were both overseas. I certainly was. It was at a bizarre time of day or night. I can't quite remember exactly when, but.
Where were you overseas?
I'm going to say New York, but I'm kind of guessing in the US somewhere.
And where was he?
No, I can't remember. When I say he was overseas, I'm not 100% sure of that, but it was. Yeah, it was going back a little bit, and it was a long conversation, and I've had a few of those over the journey with Reece. He's a good conversationalist, and he. I wish I could remember it better, but my takeaway was that he was really excited about the new role. And I think looking back over the success stories that we've had bringing players into the club, generally they've been when you have a specific plan. You know, often players are good, generalists, and you bring them in and you sort of think, we'll just assess it and see how it goes and work out where he fits. That can be a bit tougher, but with Reece, I think the carrot for him was he could come in and, we were going to give him every chance in that specific role, and it was kind of, his to lose in a way. And I think he embraced that, and as I said, I think he's been really good for us.
His perseverance as a player, you mentioned, the countless games he's had along the way. I mean, what do you think that says about him that he's gotten to 200 games now?
Yeah, he's one of those players who he's had some injury problems, in a way. I shouldn't sort of stereotype those guys, but he's one of those fast twitch, powerful guys that has had to learn about his body as he's developed. It's not as if he just sort of rolls out every week and feels good. He's really had to prioritise his recovery and his sort of injury prevention, and he's got that to a point where he's been a resilient player for us, because it didn't look like that at times throughout the early part of his career with some soft tissue injuries, and it's compounded a little bit when you play in the ruck. Like it's a high contact position and difficult to back up. So yeah, he's really turned into a true pro and a good role model for our younger ruckmen in particular.
I know what's going on fast.
You're right.
Taron Thomas, what did you make of Andrew Mackey's comments on SEN saying he'd be open to bringing in a player?
Yeah, highly undisciplined comments. That's a joke, by the way. I didn't hear them, but I would imagine that he's talking about a player in a way that all of us who are spokespeople for the club would talk about any other player. We're open-minded at the Cats, but in that specific instance, it's a bit like the other issue with Alistair Clarkson and Jeremy Finlayson. I'm not across those issues well enough to give a strong opinion privately, much less publicly. But I think it is good policy to be open-minded. We believe in second chances. That doesn't mean that you can just roll in and do whatever you want. But yeah, I think in principle the idea of not getting to know too quickly is a good one.
Do you back the club's culture to sort of help kind of rehabilitate guys who've gone off the rails a little bit? You mentioned Tyson Stengel.
I think it's really unfair to compare Tyson Stengel to Taron's situation. And I think it's a tad arrogant when football clubs, and I don't think they mean it this way, but when you imply that we're such a good footy club that anyone can come in here and we'll just spray them with magic dust and they'll turn into great people, again, I consider it a bit offensive to the rest of the competition. But I think the most important thing is that, yeah, we are open-minded. Now, that's a long, long way from yes, but it's a start.